What's 178?
Welcome back to Senate Education. This is draft 3.1 of H727, which is 178 pages. That's my confusion. Glad you guys jumped on me. And I think, Daphne, if you mind getting rid of that little thing, we'll get started. Ms. St. James.
Thank you. Beth St. James, Office of Professional Regulation.
Yep,
That's where I used to work.
Right.
Office of Legislative Counsel. So you have draft 3.1 of H727 in front of you. The highlighting represents changes, and I have all the page numbers for you, but the highlighting represents changes between yesterday and today. The first change is something I noticed when I was starting the section by section summary, and that is in section 2 on page 1, the repeal date was on July 1, 2022, which was the previous effective date, and now the effective date of this bill is on passage. So I just changed the repeal to also be on passage of the act. And then the first change is on page 70. On lines 2, 3, and 4. This language is added. So we are in the withdrawal section for unified union school districts. And this is the kind of first step where there's been a withdrawal study committee, and there's been a withdrawal study committee, and they put together a report, and now the Secretary of Education is taking that first look at it. And there was discussion yesterday about wanting to ensure that the supervisory unions who may end up providing supervisory union services to this withdrawing town are consulted in the process. So I added a requirement that or added language that the secretary shall hear from, so it's to provide the representatives of the withdrawal study committee and the liaison subcommittee and any supervisory union that has been identified as a potential source of supervisory union services for the proposed new school district an opportunity to be heard. Does that meet what your goals were in including a supervisory union in consultation?
I believe it does.
Okay.
Anyone? Yeah. No, I believe that's good.
So that language is added to page 70, 73, 88, and 91. And those are all places either in section 724 or 725 where there were meetings required and opportunities to be heard. So potential supervisory unions are added. The next change is on the same page, page 70, and this is a suggestion by AOE from yesterday, and that is, there was a comment that the timeline of 90 days within which the Secretary of Education issues an advisory opinion on the feasibility of withdrawal could potentially be tough. And so there was a suggestion to add language that the 90-day deadline is the deadline unless the study committee agrees to an extension of the deadline. That language is added on page 70, 71, 89, and 89, and 71, yep. Anywhere where that 90-day deadline related to an advisory opinion by the secretary is located. And then any comments or concerns about any of that?
No.
Okay, can jump to page 151. 151, yes, I'm sorry.
Oh.
151. So let's see. So this is the language change here. So we are in section 4, which would apply to Ripton. Yesterday, you saw language that required a two-step process with a review by the Agency of Education and then the State Board of Education with the final determination. And then this language represents just one determination or one review, and that is by the State Board of Education. So the status report is still required. It's with the new school district gives that status report to the state board. The state board considers it. The language proposed by AOE yesterday did not include holding a meeting in the community. So I kept that language in based on committee discussion. So the state board has to, let's see. Oh, it looks like maybe I didn't do that in this section. So I can fix that if you'd like. But the state board takes testimony.
I'm just looking once,
In section 4, you didn't do it, or you did?
you did not.
I thought I did. I know I did it elsewhere, and I perhaps missed it here. But that's an easy add back in. It would read: the state board shall consider the status report and provide the board of the new school district an opportunity to be heard. Instead of at one or more of the board's regularly scheduled meetings, it would be an opportunity to be heard and a meeting within the community or the new school district. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And then the state board may also take testimony from other entities and then issues a determination of preparedness on or before September 1st. And if the preparedness is deemed likely, the state board, everything can move forward. And if it's deemed unlikely, then all withdrawal actions are undone. The town stays within the union district, and the voters have to start the withdrawal process all over again if they wish to pursue withdrawal again. So it's just a one step. It's still the state board saying, I'm going to undo everything because we're determining that preparedness is unlikely. Instead of a two-step process, this is just the state board doing that. And then on page 164, there are a couple, I guess I should say on page 162, there are a couple small changes there recommended by AOE. This is to the application of this section, and I believe the changes on page 162, lines 5 and 6. Instead of the state board has not approved final withdrawal, has not, I think, previous language so that they haven't taken any steps toward approving final date of withdrawal or an assumption of the full operations. I believe this language is meant to reflect that the state board has been working with Lincoln all along. And so the section would apply if the State Board of Education has not approved the final date of withdrawal and assumption of full operations. And the state board, so on 162 lines 9 and 10, again, this is language proposed by AOE that at any time before July 1, 2022, the self-selected representatives of the petitioning town shall submit a report and plan to the state board and indicate to the state board that the documents are submitted pursuant to this section. So it's clear that they're submitting this information to the state board to fulfill the process within this legislation and not for some other purpose.
100%.
So
Beth, at any time before July 1st is highlighted, did it not have a time frame before, or is it just changing the time?
I think the time frame was there before. I think this was just some wordsmithing. And so it changed from yesterday. The July 1 date has not changed.
Okay.
I think it was embedded in the paragraph itself. So the July 1 date is not in. And then on page 164, again, there's been a report and a plan submitted to the State Board of Education. Remember, the State Board of Education has not approved withdrawal yet, but the voters have all voted to withdraw. So this is, again, just a one-step process now, rather than the Secretary of Education giving kind of an initial take on it and then the State Board giving a final take on it. This is just a review by the State Board of Education. Here, the language in blue is what I inserted, and I apologize for not inserting it in section 4, but the language in blue is was not in the AOE recommendation, but was language that the committee had been interested in, and that is ensuring that a meeting is held at a location within the petitioning town, and then the source of supervisory union services is consulted in this process. And then
Senator Persick.
Beth, do you know if the operational date for Lincoln is the same as Ripton, July 1st of 2023? You don't know?
I don't know. And then it's the same. The State Board of Education gives a preparedness determination. If they think it's likely that the proposed new school district will be ready on its proposed operational date, then the State Board would approve the withdrawal plan and take any other actions necessary to allow the new school district to move forward. And then if on page 165, if preparedness is deemed unlikely, then they shut it all down. They declare the petitioning town's proposal to withdraw is denied. The petitioning town remains a town within the Union School District, and it's a final decision. So those are the changes to the body of chapter 11. There were additional changes to some of the session law sections, but does anyone have any questions?
So this, with the parts that we added to the withdrawals that are in process, that says the State Board, if they say preparedness is deemed unlikely, they can end the process and go back to the way it was. What does it say? Are we doing the same for those that might want to withdraw in 2 years? But we don't have that provision in that part. You know what I mean?
I think so. So if this bill passes and is signed into law, it has an enactment date of, or an effective date of on passage. So this, so the withdrawal sections are section 724 and 725 up, so chunk 2.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who hadn't initiated a asterisk here hasn't initiated, I'll get to that, that's section 7. But anyone who hasn't initiated a withdrawal process in some way, shape, or form, the new law would apply to them.
I get that.
Yeah.
The question is, does the new law include this provision that's just one step, and that one step just end? Because I know we added it to this chunk 3, but I don't know if we added it to chunk 2. Do we have a?
Yes.
Are they aligned on that point? Is the question.
Yes. So let me just direct you to the right page here.
So you're saying yes, they are.
So they are aligned?
Or yes, you understand the question.
Yes, you're asking if a petitioning, so it's a little different in that the section 4 and section, well, I guess it's not that different. So there's a study committee. Their study committee has to give a report, and the report goes to, so the withdrawal sections, I'm just looking at it now. No, the withdrawal sections have a 2-step process. It's the Secretary of Education giving an advisory opinion, and then the State Board of Education making a final review.
It seems to me that's a little weird that we're
To have it different.
Why would we have it? Why would we have it different for the 3 towns and make it less, less easy if you want to save that for the 3 that are in process? You think you would do it the other way around. The 3 that are in process would be easier, but we're actually making it tougher for the 3 that are in process. there's somebody that might do it in 2 years from now.
Yeah, so what would you recommend for consistency purposes? Go like which language?
I think if I sense the will of the committee, because we agreed to it on these three, we would want it for all withdrawals, not just the ones in process.
So Starksboro, anyone?
Right, or
Right.
East Overshoe that
Yeah,
does it in
yeah,
2026.
Yes. Does that make sense, Ms. St. James? Are
It
you
does.
following?
It does. So that's what you reviewed yesterday. And then this language reflects the AOE proposal. So I will just.
Reverse.
Oh, actually, no. The AOE proposal was for the session law. It wasn't for the withdrawal section. I'm looking at my, yes. So the version that you looked at yesterday for section 724 and 725, the withdrawal sections had the two-step process.
Mhm.
And then AOE's proposal was to change the two-step process to a one-step process in the session law.
Right, yes, Senator Person.
But is the two-step process in chunk 2, is the second step of that two-step process give whoever it is, the board or AOE authority to end the withdrawal?
Yeah.
Or do they just, okay, so we do have that in there.
Yes.
That was my main question, like, do they have the power to end it?
Yes.
Because we added that to chunk 3. I'm not really concerned or not about the two-step process, but I wanted to make sure
There's
that
some-
part,
Yeah,
ending it, there's an actual end date is, which we heard strong from AOE and BOE, that had made it into chunk 2.
Yes, if the state board on the second determination says it does not look like this is going to be ready, then they shall not approve the report. It does not go to the electorate. It's all done.
And I think that's fine to have two-step, because I think one of the reasons that we heard from AOE yesterday is there's not time
Right,
to July,
right.
November to
It
have
was,
2
yeah.
steps.
yeah.
So it's okay to have 2 steps in the future for East Overshoe.
Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Terrence's gonna look for a house. in
Yeah.
East Overshoe.
Yeah, Senator. Okay, please continue, Ms. St. James.
I just want to flag for the committee's consideration that section 7, there's been no changes to it. Let me get you a page number here as I scroll.
169. Page? 169. 169. Yep, got it.
So section 7 would apply to any town that has either not taken a vote, they haven't initiated the withdrawal process, they've just been kind of mulling it over, or there've been some public discussions about it, or they've gone as far as taking a vote within the petitioning town. But all of the other towns within the Union School District have not voted, and that vote has not been finalized yet. Section 7 would apply to that situation. So if, I think that this would apply to Starksboro.
Okay.
So this section, it would apply to Starksboro, and it would, if the vote of the other towns within the Union School District does not happen and is not finalized before the effective date of this act, any vote that's occurred is mooted, and they have to start all over again under the new law.
Right, and we're not comfortable with that. So, Senator Bursley.
Yeah, so we talked about having section 7, basically any school that fits that bill follow the same procedures as those in section 6. However, I think it works, but my only wondering is if the timeline that they would, like, if they would have a different timeline, like they don't have the same crunch time, so maybe have section 7, if they haven't had a vote, for the other towns haven't voted, if they have voted before the bill is enacted, then follow section 6, but I'm just flagging that we might have to change the dates. Like, do they need to do a report by July 1st? I'm not sure.
So and there, you know, we can fix it. We just have to be careful about the language that we use. But the kind of conundrum here is section 6, the votes have all happened under law as it sits now. Section 7 would straddle old law and new law once this act is passed.
But we're basically saying that section 7, if you have a vote before the bill comes into effect, you're like grandfathered, sort of like into, not the whole old system, but the system that we've created in section 6.
Okay.
Basically, like Lincoln, giving them the same opportunity to proceed sort of under the old rules, but as amended in section 6.
Okay.
Even though they just had one vote, they've been working on it for a long time. So instead of pulling the rug out from under that town.
Does that make sense, Ms. St. James, what we're trying to avoid here?
I think so. I think it actually, my gut reaction right now is that you need a whole new section to address this, that it doesn't fit neatly into section 6. And then you're going to get into a whole bunch of if this, then that in section 6, which might make it unclear. Because in section 6 applies, the votes have already happened and they've been working with the State Board of Education. In section 7, the votes haven't happened and they haven't been working with the State Board of Education. So there's presumably a lot more work they have to do to get that information ready for a report, et cetera. So I would just, if you're asking me to.
Just that it's the same, so it still says section 7, so that the conditions are the same, but that the timeline is different because they haven't gone through, the other towns haven't voted, they haven't heard from the Board of Education, but they would kind of go through the process.
Parallel process with appropriate timing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's just the timing. How much time do they need and have in here?
What do you
Right,
think,
and
Beth?
Well, I hear what you're saying, and I will draft something that I think makes sense, and you can tell me if it doesn't.
Okay.
But I you know, part of the timeline is contingent on when there is when the proposed operational date is, and so you don't have any of that here. So,
but maybe just they still have to do a report by July 1st, but that report is different. It just says, you know, it's like the
vote.
yeah, I don't know that you even have a vote by July 1st.
Well,
yeah, well, they're already voting on May 9th or whatever.
yeah.
For the one specific town, Starksboro.
But is it just Starksboro that's voting, or is it all the towns within the Unified Union School District voting?
All just Starksboro has to vote, and then I don't know what the timeline is to get the other ones to vote. I mean, I think that's what we heard was a problem with the process, is that there wasn't a timeline for the other to schedule that other vote, so it would drag on. So it is kind of creating a new section to deal with that.
So would you like me to bake in the timeline within which the vote has to happen? I'm just thinking of, if you're going to require a report by them, it should certainly fall after there's been a vote to proceed with withdrawal. And if we don't know when that's going to happen, I'm just.
I see it as a hybrid of chunk 2 and chunk 3 language.
Okay. Would it be okay if I talk to Donna a little bit about just the practical implications of how it might unfold, so that would inform dates that I plug in?
Yes, please.
Okay. So you want Starksboro to be able to go forward
Yes.
with the vote and then be required to give the report to the State Board of Education. And then the State Board of Education would say, okay, looks great, keep going, or stop.
Senator Herseth.
Well, I mean, I think generally, but there might be other steps in there, like the votes of the other town, just like everybody else has had. And then, you know, depending on what those votes, if they vote no, then they don't have to proceed.
Correct.
So the way it is now, they have to go all the way back to the beginning of chunk 2, I think of it as that. What we're trying to say is parts of chunk 2 would still apply to them because they haven't done, but the new chunk, you know, chunk 2, not existing law. And then parts of chunk 3 that we created a new process for people that have already started the process. So basically trying to recognize that they started the process and we're kind of grandfathering them into the old process, but there's parts of the old process that really didn't work. And we fixed those in chunk 2.
So they can
But
use those.
but they aren't the same as the other chunks in chunk 2, so we need to adjust it.
I think I hear what you're saying, and I will draft something for you for tomorrow. I just want to point out that under current law, the vote happens first, and then it goes to the State Board of Education. Under chunk 2, it doesn't go to a vote until the State Board of Education says okay. So what I'm
Right.
hearing is you don't want chunk 2 to apply at all.
Well, there's parts of chunk 2 that if we do, they will have a vote. So they're going to have a vote. If they vote no, then the whole thing's over. There's
Right.
stay in there. But if they vote yes, instead of sending them through the whole chunk 2, as it states now, they get kind of a truncated process since they had already started the process.
Right. I think we're just talking about, yes, I understand what you're saying. I will draft something.
And I'm happy to go through it with you.
I think I'm super clear on what you're looking to do. I just think it's I think I'm clear on it, but I can send you the language as soon as it's drafted for your review. Great. The next change is on page 171, line 1. It's just adding the Vermont League of Cities and Towns to the Union School District Closures Report consultation list.
Miss the closure.
Senator Hooker.
Oh, did we miss on page 170? Closure.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. This is the page 170. This is kind of a hybrid of language proposed by AOE and then based on the committee's goals yesterday. So the highlighted language is new. So the moratorium on school closure reads now, notwithstanding any provision of law to the contrary, a union school district shall be prohibited from closing a school building within its district unless the building closure has already been accounted for in the fiscal year 2023 school budget, or the closure is approved by the district voters residing in the town in which the building is located. I want to pause there. This language is meant to meet what you were trying to do regarding allowing those closures that have already been planned for to go forward. Does this do what you were hoping it to do? Or is this what you were looking for, I should say?
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay. And then the last sentence, lines 10 through 12 is again a hybrid of AOE language and the committee's goals. And that is closing a school building means the district ceases to use the building to provide direct education for a majority of the grades operated within the building on, or there should be an or there, or before July 1, 2022. Does that meet what you were hoping to accomplish there?
Yes.
Okay. And then you have a new section, section 11 on page 172 is the employment transition language. It's just plunked right in there. It's not, I didn't highlight the whole section.
For sure, it's all section 11.
It's all section 11. And then on page 177 is section 12, which is the application of the employment transition provision. I don't know if it was clear yesterday, but this is a different section than the statute. And then the effective date section number just changes because we added 2 sections. And those were the changes from yesterday.
So in addition to the work that Senator Perchlik raised, that we discussed around Starksboro, any other updates or concerns or comments, amendments at this point? Senator Chittenden.
I think consistent with what Senator Perchik was saying, that you said you understood, I just have been persuaded by Herb Olson's advocacy that it'd be nice to treat Starksboro as much as possible like Lincoln and Ripton, and that I trust your good judgment, Elizabeth, to translate that into the right amendments aligned with what Senator Perchik was saying earlier.
Senator Perchlik's been talking with House member, I believe a little bit with Conlon, and also our Madison delegation. Anything else from them? I mean, so my thing on all this is I will talk to Rep. Webb again. I talked to her a little bit today. I'm hoping we can get to a point where they can concur, because otherwise,
Oh my God.
Report this.
do you think that's a possibility?
I think it's a possibility, but I wouldn't want to represent that they're fine
Sure,
with what we're
sure,
doing. I
sure.
think they disagree with parts of it, but they're also like, you guys gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
They're not here to wordsmith it, so they want us, they're supportive of the general direction that we're taking, I think, and but I don't want people to think
No, sure, absolutely.
that they're not, that they'd be surprised
Yeah.
if either the House members or other senators say like, oh, wait a second, I don't like this, or I have heard like, oh, can you make these changes? But there's only so many
Things
hours that we can dig into the details here.
Don't you think that what we've done really is to add some definition to what they've done? I mean, so the timelines, the cutoff periods, so that things aren't just left out hanging and in limbo. So, you know, that.
Some people like the limbo,
Right.
but then, so whether they can live with that, not having the
Yeah, I know, but I think the schools need to have some support like that.
and in a way, what I've heard from some is that it's helpful because it does make an end point. I mean, they can always start the withdrawal process over again. So
Sure,
if they really
sure.
want to continue, they can,
But it's good, I think it's good that we're accounting for those towns that have already started the process,
yeah.
even though they're at various
Mhm.
stages. So that is important,
And I think-
kind of not pulling, as you said, pulling the rug out from under it. you know?
I think specifically that change we made today to section 7
Yeah.
is a big
To
change
accommodate
that's gonna help
Yeah.
with some other senators.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Ms.